So, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Lord, thank you for bringing us here together. Thank you for allowing us to grow in your knowledge and grow in your wisdom. Thank you for, giving us this experience of going to seek, especially for Elliot and I, and allowing us to give back to the ACU. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right, so to start off, I'm not sure if you guys really know what Seek is, or if anyone has even heard of it, or how much you really know. But we're gonna really start off with a video or the trailer for the 2026 conference. So here it is.
There are few places that when you walk into them, you can't help but realize the significance of what God is doing in the world. Our gaze is lifted to the heights. There's a feeling that comes over you as you step in and realize you're not alone. Something big is happening around you, and you're part of it. Christ is calling you in to take part. These moments are sacred and sometimes hard to find, but they can mark us. This is happening here. Somehow God has breathed a relentless vision in us to gather, to equip, to turn to the heights. For years, we've been gathering the masses and have watched the Lord use Seek to transform thousands upon thousands of lives. So we pray that God would continue this work, that His will would be done as we follow His footsteps, that He would go before us as we expand this vision to 3 cities across America. And with the words of patron Saint Pier Giorgio Frassati in our hearts, always search for that which is higher, to set off beyond ourselves towards the highest of what it means to be man. Verso alto, to the heights. Always towards, always forward, to the light, to the truth. Beyond simply existing, but living.
Yes, yeah. So the conference, or the city that Elliot and I attended, or the U Catholic community attended, was the one in Columbus, Ohio. So they had 2 other locations this year because it's grown so massively. And I believe just at Columbus, Ohio, they had about 20,000 people there. So, yeah.
This is your second year, right?
Yes.
You went last year.
Yes.
So to introduce ourselves, my name is Elliot Wright. I'm a senior at the University of Miami. I study computer science and math, and I'm newly a postulante.
Same here. I'm newly a postulante from towards the end of last year. Both Elliot and I and a group of us UM students became postulantes. I'm Maroon Issa. I'm a second-year finance student at Miami-Dade College. And this is my second year going to Seek, and Elliot's first. So, what exactly is Seek? So, Seek is a yearly Catholic conference for young adults, or mainly tailored towards young adults, not only for young adults, but the whole point is to explore the big questions that us young Catholics have had for years. So Focus, I'm not sure if you guys have heard of the organization Focus, is a non-for-profit which tries to bring knowledge or the Catholic faith to college campuses. And they notice that there's a big yearning for a greater knowledge when it comes to, these teachings in the Catholic Church. So they decided to organize this big conference that has been going on for multiple years now, called Seek. And it brings multiple students, multiple college students, multiple families every year for us to just grow together in community and learn about the Lord.
So the purpose of Seek for the students is for us to absorb knowledge, grow in our faith, and explore our calling to a higher purpose, specifically to do those things while being in community with other young Catholics, other Catholic students. We were lucky enough to receive a sponsorship from the ACU to go to Seek this year and to dive into the teachings and insights shared by the speakers at the conference.
Yeah, and I think one of the big reasons why the ACU saw the opportunity to sponsor us is because they see that it aligns with their mission, to really bring Catholic teaching to not only, to the younger generation. I know the ACU specializes mainly in men, correct? But Seek, or Focus itself, is trying to bring this to the younger population. So some of the most impactful speakers for us were Arthur Brooks and Father Mike Schmitz, and they both touched up on very, very important and relevant topics for our day and age. Arthur Brooks focused on the science of happiness and how we can find joy in God. And he also explored the science of why so many people, or the epidemic of why so many people are depressed and anxious, so anxious these days. And he gave us the science, he broke it down, and in my opinion was one of the best talks at Seek this year. And then the other really influential speaker for me was Father Mike Schmidt, talking about how we don't deserve anything, right? He basically humbled us down and made us realize that we don't deserve anything. No human deserves anything. We don't deserve, our lives, nevertheless salvation. So you'll see how that turns around to becoming a really good talk. And yeah.
Yeah, so to dive deeper on Dr. Arthur Brooks's talk, he's a professor at Harvard, and he teaches actually the most popular class at Harvard, which is just called Happiness. So in his speech, he gave us 3 important tips on how we can make our lives happier today. So the first one was to get off our phones. It seems a little bit obvious, but it definitely can be extremely difficult for a lot of us, especially young students. He gave us specific recommendations on how to do that as well. So he gave us 2 times of the day that we should never have our phone next to us. It's the first hour when we wake up and the last hour before we go to sleep. He also gave us specific areas of the house that we should never bring our phone, like the bedroom and the bathroom. One tip he gave us is he told us in his family they actually all put their phones into a safe next to their bedroom before they enter the bedroom and go to sleep. That way they're not tempted by it while they're in their bedroom. And he also told us we should get physical alarm clocks. A big excuse for a lot of us to use our phone in the morning and at night is to set our alarms and then, be awakened by them in the morning. But obviously, we can do that with just a simple physical alarm. So that's not totally necessary. And then this.
Can I interrupt and just ask,
Yeah.
was he able to relate the mechanism by which the phones and being tied to electronics and so on contributed to the anxiety and the depression?
Yeah, he talked a little bit about dopamine release. He is a neuroscientist, so yeah, he told us the constant dopamine release that we get from checking our phones, especially from notifications, especially in the morning when you wake up and you have 50 notifications on your phone. It's not a natural way of living your life, right? I mean, humans we were made to wake up and to start our day maybe with cleaning ourselves, and then going outside. We get our first big dopamine release by talking to people, right? By being in community with other people. But when you're experiencing like notifications on your phone or going on social media, as soon as you wake up, you get that dopamine release that you would normally get with other people just in your bed at home. So you have no reason to, get up, get ready, and go experience the physical world. And that ties into his second tip, which was to be bored more often. I think that's the toughest thing for a lot of us with using our phones is we try to fill up any empty space in our day-to-day lives with our phone. So, for example, he told us we shouldn't be bringing our phones into the bathroom. That's one example. When you're in the bathroom, obviously you're forced to sit down for minutes, maybe, sometimes hours at a time for some of us. But when you don't bring your phone into an environment like that, whether it be, onto the toilet or in the shower, you realize a lot of your best ideas, right? And a lot of your best just conversations with God happen in those moments. So if you fill up every little empty space in your life with your phone, then it's going to be really difficult for you to find purpose throughout your day and to be in relationship with God in your day-to-day life. And then the third tip he gave us was to be more loving with one another, to be in community. Arthur Brooks he's not only a neuroscientist and a professor, but he's also a political analyst and a political advisor. And he noticed when going to political events that a lot of the time politicians would talk about our fellow Americans or people in our own family as the enemy, right? They would speak using very hateful terms towards people who had different political beliefs than us. And he noticed as a neuroscientist that was one of the biggest things that divided people in their marriages and in their families, right? It's just having different political beliefs, even religious beliefs. So he reminded us that the correct way to approach disagreements with the people we love is with love, right? Not with hate. So, yeah, that was Arthur Brooks's talk on happiness.
Yeah, so I really want to emphasize the idea of growing in community. Sharing experiences and these challenges with other young adults really helps us grow. This is a picture of Matthias and I last year at SEEK. You guys might remember when we gave that presentation. But it was, just going through this, idea of we're going to this convention together. We're all getting in a group to learn more about God is just so important. And Arthur Brooks really stressed that. He really spoke about community. And actually, going back to Manny's question, that is one of the biggest reasons why our phones are causing this big epidemic of, extreme stress and depression and anxiety. It's because we're not in community and we're social beings. We were made to be social. God made us with mouths, with minds, with eyes. Like he wants us to be able to talk to each other and talk to him as well. But we don't have time to do that if we're always on our phones, because being on your phone on Instagram for a couple of minutes is going to be way more instantly gratifying than having a conversation or going out of your way to introduce yourself to someone random, which we saw way more often a couple of years ago. But now we just see that people are on their phones all the time, and it's a very, very sad thing. But to emphasize again, the growth in community is very important, and SEEK definitely provided that supportive environment for us to grow spiritually and physically, and personally. I apologize. So now talking about Father Mike Schmitz's talk. So he really emphasized the fact, like I said before, that our lives are super unfair. And, we see this in multiple examples in the Bible. One of the biggest ones being when God instructed Abraham to go sacrifice his son, Isaac, on Mount Moriah. I'm assuming, growing up, I think we all looked at that story and we're like, this is crazy. This is insane. How could God want a father to kill or sacrifice his own son? But when you take a further look at it, there's a reason why he did that. And it wasn't even to necessarily test Abraham. It was really to show him that he needs to put his full trust in God. Because when he did put his trust in him, God provided a lamb rather than his son. And it's just the perfect example of when we're in a time of stress and we feel like, oh, God's not working in my life, I don't know what to do. That is the perfect time to fall back on God. All the time is the perfect time to fall back on God, but that's when we need to have the most trust in him, because he's always going to be there for us. So Father Mike Schmitz was telling us about how we don't deserve anything, we don't deserve salvation, which is absolutely true. God's very merciful. But then he used these two words that changed our entire perspective, which is, but God. And these two words, you might be asking, what does that have to do anything? Okay, I'm confused. But the whole point is that God is still there. But God gave us Jesus. God gave us salvation. But God gave us his mercy. And through that, we're able to live and grow in his name and grow in relationship with him. And it goes to show that we are so blessed. We're really blessed. God could have easily made us, not given us free will, just had us there as puppets. And, we wouldn't be here. But we're blessed to be here. And we're blessed to be here with God and in community with one another. And that's mainly what Father Mike Schmidt's talk was about.
And then another one of the talks that was really impactful for us was the speaker Matt Fradd. He's a podcaster. A lot of you guys may know him. He had a talk about what our purpose is as human beings, what we were made for. And he told us that we were made to have a relationship with God. So obviously, we all come into the world with a lot of curiosity. We question, when it comes to God, why were we created? Why did God create the world? What is our purpose on earth? And what are we meant to do to please him? And one of the things we learned in the talk was that God made us to have a relationship with him. And what that means is that once we're able to love God and have a relationship with him, then we're able to see God in the people around us. And then we're able to truly love the people who are important to us in our lives. So that goes into the community point. He told us if we're made purely by coincidence, then our lives would be depressing. That's why we have to remember that, we were made intentionally by the Lord. We all have a purpose here on earth. And I think that allowed us all to, I think that point allowed us all to understand the purpose, not only of our relationship with God, but our relationship with other people. And it allows us to grow in those relationships. So a realization that I had is if God made us to have a relationship with him and with others, then if we truly love the people around us, then it's incumbent on us to help us show others how to have a relationship with God as well, right? So I think that puts a large responsibility on all of us to evangelize, right? To evangelize our faith and to try to spread the relationship with God to other people so that they might know God as well. So that was our big takeaways for Matt Fradd's talk.
Now, to go into the key takeaways of the entire experience, we defined 4 main points. The first one being mortality. We must accept the fact that our lives are not deserved, and more importantly, neither is our salvation. We deserve death. So when we realize that the only thing we deserve is death, and probably even worse, we can all probably think of some pretty bad sins we've committed. We don't feel worthy of God's love, but it's important to be humbled, and it's important to realize that we are dependent on God. And once we realize that we're dependent on God, it allows us to embrace his love even more and embrace his support, because pride is what causes us to it's what causes us to steer away from the Lord. If we're prideful and we believe that we can do everything by ourselves, even if we're praying, we're like, oh yeah, I got the situation handled, we can get prideful and we can fall into the same sins over and over again due to the pride. So we really have to break ourselves down and realize that we don't deserve anything and we need to be fully dependent on God. And then
Just to add on to that quickly, on the point of mortality, something from Father Mike Schmidt's talk that I really enjoyed was he talked a lot about death and the purpose of our lives here on earth. And something he said that really stood out to me was that we should see our lives here on earth as a pathway to heaven, right? And we should see each day of our lives as like our daily medicine or our daily pill that we need to get better, to eventually become holy enough to make it to heaven. So I think when you approach life with that perspective, then it helps you think about the challenges in your life, not as, sorry me, I have all these problems, this isn't fair, but to see it as, it's like medicine every day that's going to help you become holier.
So the second big key takeaway that we had was relationship with God and community. And I'm sure you guys have realized I've said that like a million times, but the reason why is because I genuinely realize it's so important to be around the people that are trying to aim for the same goals as yourself. That's why we're here. That's why we have the ACU group at the ACU group at FIU. That's why, we aim to better ourselves, because we have our friends pushing us. And Elliot and I told some of our friends that we were going to be here today presenting, and they came and they showed us support. I mean, if we didn't have a group to support us, it'd be very difficult to just push on by ourselves. So that was a really big takeaway. Again.
Yeah, and I would say also at Seek, the biggest benefit to the community is, I think, being able to experience the sacraments with other fellow young Catholics. So, for example, there's a 8 a.m. Mass every day, every morning at Seek, where everyone at the conference, over 20,000 people, and hundreds of priests.
Yeah, I think over 1,000 probably.
Over 1,000 priests, tens and tens of bishops, all experience the daily Mass together. And it's really just a totally different experience than any other Mass that you would have been to in your lives. Just seeing that many people receive communion and the effect that has on the conference as a whole, it's really something special. And then also the sacrament of confession. On Saturday, when they did confession before adoration, we had over 10,000 students waiting in line for confession. It was a line that spanned throughout the entire convention center. So that was really special. And I know for me personally, I got to go to confession with one of my friends who is in OCIA, and he had never been to confession before. This was his first confession. So for me, it was really special to be able to wait in that line with him, which was like an hour and a half long, because it spanned throughout the entire convention center, and just give him advice, and sort of be able to experience his excitement and the level of, relief he got by being able to go to confession for the first time in his life.
And I'm just going to say right now, if you guys have not experienced something like that, being in a convention center with 20,000 Catholics, going to Mass, I'm going to say right now, you guys have to do it. You should add it to your bucket list right now, because you genuinely feel it. You walk into the massive room where they're having Mass with all the people who are there, and you feel it. You feel God is there. You feel so much peace, but you feel this crazy sense of awe. The procession takes 20 minutes for all the priests to get from one part of the convention center to the other, or one part of this room, because it was really maybe 5 rooms joined together, and big rooms too. So I'm gonna say right now, if you haven't experienced it, I really recommend it, because you see this sense of awe, especially for the younger community, to see that there are this many people who are at this age who are willing to go to this and make this trip, even if it was advertised as a trip with your friends or whatever. I mean, the fact that we have that amount of people just wanting to get to know the Lord, or growing in community, was crazy. And it really shows that the trends have been on the upside for the Catholic community, especially the young one, and there are scientific studies to back it up too. We have more people converting to Catholicism than we have people leaving the church. So, yeah.
And when there's that many people receiving at Mass, you do have to kneel for a very long time, but
on concrete.
on the floor. There's no kneeling stools, obviously. So, but it is 100% worth it. And then the next takeaway The next big takeaway for us at Seek was God's love for us. The words "but God" from the Father Mike Schmidt talk, I think, helped us all realize that God loves us so much that he will not lead us astray. And to go further on the story of Abraham and Isaac, and obviously the ultimate fulfillment of that story by Jesus sacrificing himself as the Lamb for God, I think it made us all a lot more thankful, because we realize in our own lives, we really don't have to sacrifice anything in comparison to what God sacrificed for us in order for us to have a relationship with him, right? Like Maroon said, there's really nothing we could do in our day-to-day life. There's nothing we could accomplish that would earn our way into heaven. But the fact that God was, loving enough to sacrifice his only son in order for us to have a relationship with him, in order for us to have the possibility to go to heaven and be with him, made me definitely a lot more thankful and just gracious for my own life. It just fills us, it filled me personally with a lot of gratitude for my life.
Yeah, and also another thing that I learned, I guess it sort of has to do with this point, is that we also have to do our part. Right? So even though God is going to be there for us and God is all merciful and all loving, we still have to do our part. We still have to, go to Mass, be in the sacraments. Yes.
Was there any time that the three conferences were brought in together, perhaps by video?
Yeah, so they had a live Zoom camera. So they had a massive tablet where they had an ongoing Zoom, and it had all three conferences just on a live video stream, so you were able to see other people and say hi. That was the main thing. I believe last year, I don't believe they did it this year, but last year what they did is that somehow they were able to stream one of the talks from another one of the conferences to ours, and it looked like he was right there. It was absolutely crazy. I don't believe they did it this year. If they did, I didn't notice. That's how good they are at it. But what they did have is they had this big screen where you can interact with other people and kind of, I guess, talk through the phone if you write some text. That was the main thing.
Do you have an idea in total, the three conferences, how many?
I'm not sure. I haven't looked into that. I know Columbus was the biggest one because it's the most locationally convenient for most people in the U.S. to get to. We have a more dense population in the Northeast and on the East Coast than we do on the west side of the United States. So
Where was the other two?
I believe it was in Fort Worth, and then Denver. Yeah. So you had a lot of the people from Texas. I mean, Texas is massive state, so they had a lot of people going there from Texas, and then in Colorado that was more of the West Coast. So that was the majority of it. They did have a map showing which states they recommend go to which conferences, but I do know that the Columbus one was the biggest one.
Yeah, it says online that there were about 26,000 total, and about 16,000 was in Columbus alone.
Okay, yeah. So just the numbers really speak for themselves. So yeah, going back to the third, or going back to that point, just saying we really have to do our part. We have to be active in the sacraments. We have to constantly seek to be in a state of grace, and just really seek to fulfill our relationship with God, because God has his hand sticking out for us. We need to be there to reach it at all times and be ready to receive his love. And finally, the last one, being in the moment, one of my favorite ones, quite honestly. I love Arthur Brooks. I'm assuming you guys saw the picture. I met him in the elevator, and it was so cool just hearing someone finally talking about the phones, because we all know it's a problem, but we don't want to confront it, especially with the younger population. I'm not sure with the people who grew up without phones how it is, but I know at least for us it's something that we struggle with every day, and we're always looking for the next best solution to get off our phones because it's so addicting. So just hearing him being so honest about it and telling us that we are addicted to our phones and that's why we are so depressed, it really hit home, and it showed me that I really need to get off my phone. I got home and I bought a $5 alarm clock from Amazon. Use it every day now. It's very good. And it's very loud. It wakes me up. But it's, it really showed me that that's one of the best ways to be living in the moment. And being bored is how I'm going to become successful and grow in my relationship with God.
I know for me personally, the phone thing is something I've been lectured about my entire life by my parents. But for some reason, it just hits different when you hear it from a Harvard neuroscientist. You know what I mean? I don't know why I needed to hear that to finally, put screen time on my phone and limit the amount of time I use on certain apps. But I did, so I'm really thankful for that.
So your parents are as smart as Harvard.
Yeah.
Professors.
Yeah, clearly.
Oh, yeah. The parents blame the phones for everything, but yeah, I think we're starting to realize that they're not wrong. But yeah, so here that's the end of the actual content of the presentation. Here we have a picture of all of us together. Here in the middle, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse. Here we have Father Adam from UMiami. He's the chaplain from St. Augustine for UMiami. I'm right next to him over here. And then Elliot, you're right. Yeah, Elliot's right here. And we had a pretty big group going. And then a couple other ACU guys. You can see Anthony right here. We have Joey over here and Chris over here in the corner. So yeah, I mean, it was an amazing time. We really loved being there, and it really helped us grow a lot. And we're really thankful for the ACU giving us, a partial scholarship to go, because, we are in college. We're pretty broke. I'm sure you guys are in the same situation, but it was so beneficial for us to go here, even though it's my second year. I mean, I went back and I realized, like, even though I thought I learned so much last time, there was still so much more to learn, and I want to keep going. And it's something that every time you go, you get so much out of it, and you get what you put into it. And we put a lot into it, and we were at a lot of the talks, just making sure that we listened and had our eyes open for the Lord. Unless you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I just want to say for me as a senior, I feel really blessed to be able to go to Seek for the first time, to have the ACU sponsorship. And we really, like Maroon said, we really got a lot out of it, from the talks and just from being in community with each other.
Yeah. So if anyone has any questions, we're going to open up to anything you guys want to add, anything you want to ask, anything like that. Yeah.
Maroon, a couple of questions. One is from the perspective of the talks that you heard. You mentioned some of the statistics. What did you guys learn about what's happening in the Catholic Church right now, particularly among college students, university students, and young people? Did they reflect on that at all? Did they talk about the trends that we're seeing across the country?
So I believe there was one of the talks spoke about it. I'm not necessarily remembering which one. There were a lot, but I think what I learned was more from my own personal experience, right? I think what I saw from my experience is that people are seeking tradition. Again, I think the Catholic Church was kind of falling off track, or it seemed to be falling a little off track with tradition, but the younger generation they're really seeking that, because we realize that the more we got lost, the more we need tradition, the more we need something strong to hold on to. And that's what tradition is. It feels like a really solid and strong base, and the Catholic Church really gave us that. I'm not sure if you...
Yeah, there was a talk, I'm forgetting the name of the speaker, but he talked about an increase. He talked about a religious revival amongst Catholic youth in the country. And he mentioned that the proportion of young people that are Catholic is very similar to what it was 20 years ago, but the proportion of people who are receiving the sacraments is much, much higher. So the Catholic youth are, I think, a lot more faithful, more dedicated in their faith now than they used to be. And he also talked about a big increase in young people going to the Latin Mass as well. So I think that goes to show that our generation is a lot more dedicated to the faith, and a lot more traditional than previous generations.
And we also see in OCIA, we have, so many people joining OCIA and, receiving their sacraments this Easter. So, yes.
You didn't end up in the hospital this time.
No, not this time. Thank God. Yeah, no.
Some people did though. Some people did.
really?
Yeah, I will say in the FIU group, I was hanging out at one of the hotels late at night, and I did see an ambulance rush over to one of the FIU hotels and pick up 4 people in stretchers and bring them into the ambulance.
Now, let me ask you a question.
Yeah, what's up?
What would you recommend, seeing your generation and younger going through this problem with the phones and stuff, what do you guys see from your perspective as a possible remedy for that?
So, I have a couple of practical tips that I've put into my life, and trust me, I've heard so many things. I know what has worked for me, and what's worked for me is after doing my own research is you have to reduce the amount that you're gonna get, happiness out of your phone. So this is in many ways one of the biggest ones is by putting my phone in black and white. I'm not sure if you guys know how to do that. If you have an iPhone, I can show you how to do it. Also, if you have an Android, I'm sure we can find out how to do it as well. That's one of the very, very good ways to do it. You just set your phone in black and white, and you're not getting as much dopamine if you see, if you're seeing a video in black and white as you are when it's colored. That's one of the big things. Another one of the big things, and I think most important things, especially after talking about community, is get a small group of friends that are willing to embark on the same journey as you to get off the phone, and make sure that you keep each other accountable. Every day, check in with each other. Make sure that we are not that we're tracking the amount of time that we're spending on our phones, but also what apps we're spending our time on. Because we might be spending our time like on an important business call, and we might do business on our phone or work. That's completely different. But if we're spending our time on TikTok or Instagram, that's another story. Another thing that I've also done is to fully delete all social medias. It's a hard thing to do, I will say, because as a young guy in this generation, you grow up wanting to be on social media, wanting to have a big following, seeing all your friends. My parents didn't let me have a phone until high school, but even in middle school, I would see my friends on Instagram and on Snapchat, and I thought that was the cool thing to do, right? Because in the moment, it is. Everyone's doing it. But you start to realize that that's actually destroying your life because you're so worried about what other people are thinking about your virtual personality rather than your actual personality, and it causes mass destruction amongst this population. So I really, really recommend just deleting all your social media and having a password that your friends can set in. I've had Matthias set in password multiple times for me, making sure that I can't re-download the apps because it can get that bad. So that's another one of the big tips. So
to add on to that, I would say a big thing for me is the notifications. So not using your phone in the first hour that you wake up is really a cheat code for this, because when you're waking up to a bunch of notifications on your phone, text messages, it's a huge dopamine release and it draws you in and it sets your tone for the entire day. So whether it be leaving your phone outside of your bedroom, or if you do bring it into your bedroom, definitely put it on do not disturb for the hours of the morning and the hours at night, so you're not being drawn into your phone in that way. I would also say deleting social media is big for that as well. When you have social media and you're just receiving, nonstop updates, notifications, somebody posted, somebody liked your post, it's really a big distraction and an unnecessary dopamine release that you don't need.
If I could add a little bit on top of that, which I think Arthur Brooks also mentioned, not using your phone while eating, 'cause it's such a almost
you want to talk here?
instinctual thing to want to use your phone entertainment while you're eating, but he mentioned, all that is kind of a substitute for eating while talking to someone and having or hanging out with your friends and your loved ones. So if you can get the chance to eat with someone, then that's a much better thing for you, than the substitute, and if not, then let yourself be bored, because really that's where you'll find you'll fall into conversation with God and like deeper thoughts than just keeping yourself distracted all the time and entertained.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you bringing that up because I had honestly forgot he said that. But that is such a good point. There's a reason why food plays such a big role in cultures, and that's because that's how a nation grew, and that's how we grew in community. You know, I mean, when we didn't have our phones, the way that a family got together, the way that a family had a good conversation, it's, hey, let's have a meal together. We're gonna have lunch and dinner together at the dinner table, and we're gonna make sure that we know what's going on with each other. But if we have our phones, I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen this. I was a waiter at a restaurant for 2 years, and I always remember seeing this father and son walk in, and they would both have headphones on, the son with an iPad and the dad with his phone, and they would order, or well, yeah, they would sit down, put on a show, both of them individually, not together, individually, sit down, watch. When the waiter came over, they would order, and then get their food, eat, and just watch by themselves. And when I saw that, that was generally one of the most depressing things I've ever seen, because for me, having a meal with my family or going out to a restaurant was an important thing. I mean, if I wanted to be on my phone, I would probably get a spanking when we were at the restaurant. So making sure that you can eat with someone else, or even if not, eat with God, have food and just make sure that you can even hear yourself chewing, because of you're just by yourself and you're in your thoughts, and that's when we have the most growth in our lives. Yeah.
Outside of the SEEK conference, as university students, do you guys have any other encounters with the Focus missionaries and so on?
Yeah.
And if you do, and from this conference, anything that perhaps can be picked up from what Focus does to implement in the ACU for betterment?
Yeah, absolutely. We see them every day at UM. We have 4 Focus missionaries at UM and 4 Focus missionaries at FIU. 2 women and 2 men at each campus. Or no, 2 women and yeah, so in total 4. So it's split up 2 and 2. And some of the things that I see that has a big, it has a really big impact is, the passion that the missionaries have to build a relationship with the students. And I think, it starts off small, because I'm going to be honest, a lot of the students that I see at the U Catholic Lounge are students who were not Catholic before or lost their faith, and then they re-encountered it with God, but through a missionary who was willing to, take the time to have lunch with them and be there for them, even though it was about drama or even though it was about some silly thing that's going on in their lives. They were there for them and became their friend, first of all. And I think that's really important. They like to have a lot of one-on-ones. They like to have a lot of Bible studies. And I actually just recently started discipleship, which is just you get a missionary and you start it with a small group of people. So mine is 3 students, and then we have a missionary. And we just talk about how we can improve our lives. And there's kind of an agenda and, a guideline of how the general direction that it should be going in. But it's really just tailored to the students and how they want it to go. So that's another one of the big things. But I guess the biggest thing is relationship, mentorship, being there as a friend. And these people, these missionaries, they're like in their 20s, but I'm so surprised because I see them and I feel like they're so ahead in life. They seem so much, older because they're just so wise. And, they're only like 24, 25. So that's one of the biggest things. And I have seen that in the ACU. I go and I get breakfast every once in a while with Manny. And we love talking about just a bunch of things that are going on. But that, for me, is what I've seen has had the biggest impact on the general population.
Yeah, the personal mentorship. Focus actually runs the campus ministries at both UM and FIU. So we're all super involved with the Focus missionaries. There's really a lot of commonalities between Focus and ACU, in that they're both trying to get young people to the faith. We both sponsor trips. The ACU sponsors the annual trip to Atlanta. Focus sponsors the annual trip to Seek. But yeah, I would agree with Maroon. The best thing that I think Focus does for a lot of the students is having that personal mentor-mentee relationship from the missionaries to a lot of the students. When you have someone who's like personally inviting you to Mass, personally inviting you to confession, to go to all of the campus ministry events, it's really it's a special experience, and you really get to experience like the community that God wants us to be in on earth.